climate change has been chosen as the children's word of the year, 2 words of the year, as Tom pointed out, following a survey by Oxford University of more than 5,000 children across the UK.
Well, they say that current events often influence children's choices of the most popular word. But is this really the case? Was the word hyphenated? And have our children perhaps been brainwashed? Well, joining us now for a bit of a ding-dong on this issue is the former Brexit Party MEP Belinda de Lucy and Laura Johnson from Just Stop Oil, the campaign group. Thank you so much to the both of you for joining us. Belinda, let's start with you. Has there been perhaps a push for children to vote in this Oxford poll for this new word of the year?
Well, I'm afraid the purpose of schools has been shifting over the last 10 years, especially to hotbeds of a lot of political activism as opposed to education. There's been a lot of teaching children what to think, not how to think. And the fact that it's 6-year-olds, classroom full of 6-year-olds to 14-year-olds, that young as 6, that have come up with climate change as their word of the year, that's not coming from them. That's words put in the mouth by adults. And what's worse is that poll after poll that was done on the mental well-being of our young last year showed very much that this climate catastrophizing and alarmism being brought into schools is having a negative impact on the mental health of our young. And what a reflection on the deterioration of our classroom teaching, that 10 years ago, the favourite word of the year for 6 to 14-year-olds was Minion. From the Minion films. How wonderful is that? How childhood friendly was that? And it's now 10 years later, after 10 years of indoctrination, it's now climate change. And it's not just healthy climate change that's being talked about, like in the 1990s about ozone layer and hopeful ways we can change that, and recycling and not putting plastics in the sea to save animals. All that stuff is fine. It's not that at all. It's extremism. It's alarmism. A poll was done last year on 1,000 sixth formers from 16 to 18 that said over half of them believed the world was likely to end in their lifetime, and half of them believed that having fewer children was going to help climate change. This is the brainwashing that's happening to our children. And unfortunately, parents don't have a lot of control over it. I have no problem with children being taught about how to take care of the planet. This is not what's happening. It is extremism, and the likes of eco-warrior extremists are having a detrimental impact on their cause because they're frightening children. They won't be happy till children's nerves are shredded.
Let's get Laura Johnson having a word now. Thank you for your opening pitch, Laura.
Hi, yeah, well, we've had 10 years of government in action, you know. Yes, it's scary, but it's the truth. It's common sense parenting, you know. The world we are living in currently, you've got floods, fires, droughts, extreme storms already impacting our food systems. And if governments had acted, then it wouldn't be the case.
Laura, so do you think it's a good thing, then, that climate change is the top word among children? Or do you think that perhaps Belinda may be right when she says it reflects an anxiety?
Well, there's eco-anxiety is a real issue, and it's based in real facts, you know. The United Nations, so the Secretary General of the United Nations has now said we've entered the age of global boiling. It's not climate change anymore, it's a climate crisis. And at least when my son grows up, he will know that I tried with every fibre of my being to fight for his future.
Belinda, what do you say to that the government just isn't doing anything to try and combat climate change?
This is crazy. As Konstantin Kisin said in his beautiful speech in the Oxford Union, if the UK was to sink into the sea, it would have absolutely no impact on climate change. OK, the UK and the people of the UK and the taxpayers in the UK and the children will not have any impact on climate change themselves. It's countries like India and China and poorer countries where actually realistically climate change is not going to be at their top priority. And the fact of the matter is that the UK is doing a huge amount already, and children should be filled with hope and agency and to study scientific ways of producing clean energy, not terrified and have their nerves shredded by these extremists that throw soup on paintings and completely destroy their cause by being aggressive and stopping working class people from getting to work. I'm sorry, but there's no place in the classroom for climate alarmism, and it's creating a mental health issue for their children. It's an abuse of power. Stay out of our schools, and just start having a word with the countries that are polluting the world. Leave the UK alone.
I mean, Laura, do you think that it's a concern that so these children were asked why they picked climate change, and they said the word makes them feel sad, scared, and worried. Are you not concerned that perhaps schools, teachers, parents even are filling their children with this anxiety when there really isn't that much that they themselves could be doing to stop climate change, and that they're living in fear? It's not a good thing, is it?
Well, the thing is, they should be scared and worried. I'm terrified. I've got an 8-year-old and I'm terrified. And you're right, the children should not have to deal with this. This is not the future and the planet that they should inherit. But unfortunately, because of corporate greed, government inaction, and I mean, the Secretary General of the United Nations, is he an alarmist? Because he said that we've opened the gates of climate hell. He said code red for humanity 3 years ago.
He is a politician, not a scientist, but...
I would say that language is alarmist, yes, Laura.
I suppose one of the issues here is how much is the UK doing? And Laura, perhaps people might be surprised to learn that we've halved our emissions in the last 20 years.
Because of very careful, we don't include... And I know I've brought this up with you before, Tom, and you denied it live on air, even though it's a fact, that we don't include aviation, transportation, all of our imported goods and our military in that. So actually, when you include those, we double our emissions. But I'm not here to talk about this.
Laura, that's not true. We've halved our emissions in terms of export, in terms of domestic, and in terms of imports being included. The emissions have still tumbled by more than almost any other country in the G7.
Look, I thought I was on here to talk about whether or not we should talk to our children about it. And I had to make that, as a parent, I had to make a very difficult decision. I started climate activism when my son was 4, and I went and had 3 arrests for Extinction Rebellion. And you only have to watch a David Attenborough documentary to know that the world's terrifying. We've lost, 70% of species in the last few decades. So children know something's wrong. My son, when he grows up, I like to think of it like if you have an adoptive child. If you adopt a child and you tell them from a young age that they're adopted, they're happy, they're fine. If they wait till they're 18 and they find out, it can cause huge risks. Now, parents are not protecting their children. You cannot protect your child by lying to them. They have to know the world that they're living in, and they have to know that their parents are going to do something about it. And
Belinda, sorry to cut you off, Laura. I just want to give Belinda, we're just running out of time, so I just want to give Belinda just one last word.
I think adults that use fear to control children, adults that want to terrify children over something that children have absolutely no control over, need to go to parenting lessons. I think it's one of the worst things you can do to children. Children shouldn't be worried about the world exploding when they're 6 years old. That is so dangerous.
OK, Belinda de Lucy and Laura Johnson.
And abuse of power over children using fear to control them.
Thank you both for powerfully.
My son knows that his mother is fighting. My son, when he's a teenager.
We're going to end it there, but thank you both, ladies, Laura and Belinda, for putting across your cases so powerfully.